this tutorial, we'll look at settings and talk about the most important ones to consider before you begin working on your blog. Let's start by clicking on Settings in the dashboard. That takes us to the General Settings page, and you can see other settings we'll be looking at over here in the submenu too. Many of the default settings can be left in place, but I want to point out a few that are the most important to consider. And remember that anything you choose now you can change later. So here we are on General Settings. This is where you can edit the blog title, the one that appears in the top banner of your blog site. You can also edit this tagline that appears in smaller type. For instance, my blog title is Insect Photography. My tagline in smaller type could be by Ines Beresbadia. So you have the option of using the tagline or clearing it and having no tagline. The rest of the options on this page are pretty trivial. Unless you want to make choices about how the time and date appear on each post, they can be left as is. Before we leave this page though, if you made any changes, you'll need to click Save Changes at the bottom. Now let's click on Writing. The most important option on this page is the default post category. That means each time you make a post to your blog, you can assign a category to it, and it will help users find what they're most interested in. We'll cover this more thoroughly in the tutorials Create and Edit a Post and All About Categories. So for now, we can just leave this as is. Now let's click on Reading. At the top of the page here, you see an option to choose what your front page is. If you're just going to use your blog site for blogging, you can leave it as is. But I'll briefly explain this other option. Some people use their blog sites more as websites with pages that are unchanging or static. If you wanted one of those pages to be your front page, then you can choose one of those, but you have to create the pages first. We'll be covering this in more detail in the Create a Page tutorial. And at that point, you can come back to this setting and choose which one of the pages will be the front page for your blog site. One of the more critical choices that you make relates to site visibility. This top one, allow search engines to index this site, is a setting that's most open and public, so anyone can find your blog with a Google search. This next option means that search engines won't be able to find your site, but anyone with a link can see it. Below are some additional levels of privacy. If you want to practice making posts and playing around on your site, I suggest that you choose the bottom option. I would like my site to be visible only to admins. This means only you and people in UVM IT who have super admin roles can see your blog. If you choose the option above it, only registered users I add, this means that you can invite specific people to be users on your blog and keep it closed to everyone else. You'll learn more about this in the Add Users tutorial. So while you're setting up your blog, select this setting, and then when you're done, you can come back and make it public. Then click Save Changes. Now let's look at the discussion settings. These relate to whether people can make comments on your blog posts and how you'll be notified about it. The reason this is important to choose carefully is because even though there is a spam filter, I can attest that there are still a lot of spammers who try to make comments to blogs, and I would definitely not want comments to be automatically posted on any of my blogs. But the first decision to be made is this third option. Allow people to post comments on new articles. If you don't want to deal with reader comments to your posts at all, just leave it unchecked. If you are interested in getting comments, put a check mark here. And remember that even if you do check it, you still have the option when you're publishing an individual post to turn off comments for that post only. I strongly recommend that you leave the rest of the settings in the default state, but if you want to read more about them, you can click Help up here and then click Documentation on Discussion Settings. This will explain all of these choices in more depth. Then click Save Changes. Let's take a quick look now at Media. This is where you can choose the sizes of images that you'll add to posts or pages. But these defaults are fine. Just remember that you can modify them later if you like. Now these last two are really quick. So let's look at permalinks. What this means is how the URL or web address looks for your posts. This is important to pay attention to if you're interested in search engine optimization, or in other words, helping search engines to find your posts more easily. This will probably not be important to many UVM bloggers, but if search engine optimization is something that's important to you, then just click on the Help button and read the documentation about permalinks and how to use them. And finally, Akismet is the spam filter, and we don't really have any options here anyway, so we can just skip that link. So, if you're following these tutorials in sequence, the next one is about customizing the appearance of your blog.